Good to go now.
Okay, brilliant. So good afternoon, everyone. It's really wonderful to be invited by ECD Forum again. And I'm talking about a topic that's really dear to me, and it's why a prepared environment is essential to the growth of the child and how the sensitive periods unfold within it. So before we start, I just want to explain a little bit about me. My name is Darcel, and I have been a British governess for 8 years in Dubai. I have 3 charges that are under my care, and I've been with them for quite a while. I hold a degree in teaching English as a foreign language with Spanish, and of course, my Montessori certification as well. At this moment in time, also progressing on to maternity certification. So children, it's everywhere. I love it. So, you know, this education is something that I'm truly passionate about. And, you know, I feel that with education, children, you know, but education starts at home. So that's exactly why I love the type of job I do as a governess, because we're implementing all these beautiful strategies at such young age, which then we can have strong, independent children later on. So that's just a little bit about me. And let's move on to what I'm going to be talking about in this presentation today. So we're first going to be looking at Montessori philosophy. So who is Maria Montessori? We're going to then be talking about her observations at planes of development, how each child matures in age. And then we're going to be looking at the absorbent mind. Then from that, we will move on to the sensitive periods. So what are the sensitive periods? How to recognize them and what to do when we observe them. And then last but not least, we're going to be discussing the prepared environment. So what exactly is a prepared environment and how do these sensitive periods unfold within it? Okay, so a little about who is Maria Montessori. So Dr. Maria Montessori was an Italian female doctor, one of the first actually in the late 1800s. And she created this new pedagogy that was based on science within education. So she observed children with emotional and mental disabilities who were sensorially deprived in their environment. So she proposed that, you know, medicine is not the answer for these children, it's education. And if we're able to give the child sensorial experiences, you know, this is going to help the child's intellect unfold greatly. And that's exactly what she proposed. She immersed herself in educational philosophy, psychology, and anthropology. And, you know, her main ethos of the Montessori philosophy is that learning has to be self-directed activity. Learning has to be hands-on, and it has to be done collaboratively with play. And one of her quotes that really stick out to me is that education is a natural process carried out by the child and is not acquired by listening to words, but by experiences in the environment. And that's exactly what she set out to do. So her mission, her vision, and her values. So her mission was to always respect the child and their learning. So we have to allow the child's natural ability to learn to unfold naturally and encourage their curiosity along the way and to pique their interest in order to instill a love for lifelong learning. Hence her motto, follow the child, because we actually, if we observe children and we step back a little bit, we can actually see how the child wants to learn without, you know, tarnishing each child with the same brush. Her vision as well is to mold future adults with skills of independence and responsibility, to be leading our world in the future by embracing tomorrow's possibilities. If we don't mold children now to become independent learners and curious learners, how do we expect them to you know, embrace tomorrow's possibilities? You know, we're not raising dependent children. We are raising independent, grateful, kind children. And that's exactly how the philosophy, what it emits, really. So, you know, following on to her values, she wants every child is unique in their own way of learning, in their own way of adapting to the environment. Every child has their own strengths. Learning is best when individualized. I mean, I've seen this as being a teacher, and observing other teachers. Each child is taught the same thing and they expect it to learn exactly the same way, but we know that's just not how it is. The Industrial Revolution is long gone. It's long gone, you know, so it's time for us to move forward and look at a holistic way of teaching that actually caters to the needs of the child. And I know nowadays it's really difficult when there are really tight curriculums and deadlines for teachers, and somehow we've lost the ability to really connect with education. And that's something I was very drawn to when I started my Montessori adventure or journey, as you know, I can say. Moving on, she also said we need to provide learning experiences that support intellectual, physical, emotional, and social development. So what we're going to look at now is we're going to take a look at the 4 planes of development, which Maria Montessori observed carefully in each stage of the child's development. So predominantly today, I am going to focus on 0 to 3 and 3 to 6, mostly 3 to 6, because I feel that this is really an important age to develop all these characteristics that we want to see later happen in adulthood. So the characteristics of the first plane, which we can see with infancy, is the physical and biological independence of the child. So in the first plane, from birth to 6 years old, the child goes through major changes and a growth spurt as well. So during this plane, the child learns to speak, to move, and to develop this will that they have within themselves. The child learns in a very concrete way, so hands-on, completely hands-on through big growth and fine motor skills. And it's important to note as well that that external order is really, really fundamental. So having a set routine, having something that's predictable for the child. From the second plane, which is we go into the stage of mental independence in childhood from the ages of 6 to 12. Where the child is entering a tranquil period of learning. So if their needs have been respected in the first plane, where we've, listened to the child and we've, helped them grow in a really fundamental way, this child has now developed a reasoning mind. They've gone into a complete conscious period of their development. At this age, they love to classify and prioritize external order. So normally the elementary child is a little bit messier. They develop their imagination and ability for abstraction during this age, but he still needs materials and concrete experience to help with the development. So socialization is really important, interest in group work, interested in the end product, and definitely rules and fairness, because how many times have your child go, that's not fair, that wasn't in the rules? This is them taking that kind of mental independence and asserting their rules and fairness. Then we move on to the third plane of development, which is adolescence. Now I can, my experience with now my child, she's 14 years old, I can definitely see that adolescence is like we're going back to infancy a little bit, the terrible twos, where we're having all these hormonal changes, these questions of like who I am in society. So this is a very fundamental age or an intense period of growth, like I said, with hormonal changes, which really disturbs the child. They become quite fragile. So rather than focusing on acquiring a ton of knowledge of this age, which of course is important, but what they're looking for are role models. They're looking to integrate into society. They interact better with their peers, because I've noticed at teenage time, you no longer want to be within the family circle anymore. You kind of want to associate and have your own independence away from that by meeting other people. And positive adult interactions is really, really fundamental. So like I said, having a role model. And then as we move on to the fourth plane, which is maturity, we're now going to the spiritual and moral independence. So in the last brain from 18 to 24 years of age, the young adult is mature enough to develop their further knowledge, to be completely independent, to start looking for their vocation, their career, their success. And this is exactly what Montessori observed carefully in the 4 planes of development. So if we want successful, independent, curious, forward-thinking adults in the future, we have to start with getting the basics right in infancy and really catering to the needs of the children in a fundamental way. So now that we've looked at the 4 planes of development, we're going to move on to the absorbent mind. So the first few years of a child's life is categorized by the absorbent mind, hence why I put in the little sponge, because that's what children's minds are like. They just soak up the information. The absorbent mind is from 0 to 6 years of age, so from birth to 6. And the young child experiences a period of intense mental activity. And this allows the child to absorb the environment around them and without conscious effort to naturally learn and spontaneously learn what's going on around them. So the children here naturally adapt to the family's culture, the language, the behavior without even a single lesson. And this is due to the absorbent mind, as Montessori called it, also known as the mental chemistry starting to take shape. So we're going to break this down into 2 periods. So we have 0 to 3, which is also known as the unconscious mind. So during this stage, the child absorbs information unconsciously or unknowingly. He or she learns to sit, to walk, to babble, to mimic without any conscious effort, because this is done innately from within the child. It's like the spontaneous reaction of the world around them. A child during this period tends to mimic what they see. The unconscious powers do not have aims or purposes. So, for example, the infant who's lying on the back, trying to, they don't know that they're trying to strengthen their spine, or by moving their legs, they're trying to develop these gross motor skills for walking in the future. I mean, they're completely unconscious about it. And this is, relating to the laws of nature that's unfolding within the child. And it's absolutely fascinating. Now we're moving on to the conscious mind from 3 to 6. As we said, the child has some memory developing. They're able to think consciously. And the period invites the child to have choices and allow for choices. And this is also a time where a child is consciously seeking certain experiences. They are predisposed towards learning things like orders, sequencing, music, numbers, and letters, but then later on will allow them to go on to maths, to go on to reading, and to go on to writing. So the child begins to show a strong desire to be independent without the aid of an adult. And normally adults adults who have toddlers between 3 to 6 years of age, adults are a hindrance to children, because this is the time where they just want to be completely and utterly the master of their own mind, body, and environment. So now that we've looked at the planes of developed and the absorbent minds, we can truly move on to what are the sensitive periods. So during the sensitive period, the child is deeply interested in a specific subject. It is therefore extremely easy for the child to acquire certain abilities related to this interest. So a new skill will certainly emerge out of this repetition. So it is like a strong will that this child carries. It's like a little fire. That's the best way I can put it, where they have to fulfill it by doing a certain activity. And this activity doesn't last for long. It's quite short, or it can be quite long, depending on the child and how many times they need to repeat this. But as you can see in the picture of the young child that's climbing up the stairs, this child has probably gone all the way to the top and then wants to come down and wants to repeat it like many, many times until that desire is gone. So it's for a short period of time, and we don't know when it will happen. We know that there are certain, between the ages of 0 to 6, this is a time for the sensitive periods to emerge, but there is no linear time frame for this. Once, like I said, once a certain skill has been attained, and the sensation of this fascination passes, the intense desire to learn for that skill has gone. So we see a young boy there, he's reading a book. He probably can't read the words in it, but he's intense because he's studying the pictures. Whereas we have the father and the son there, and they're looking at the tiny objects because the child is fascinated by that. And you might see when you go on a walk, the child is bending down and looking at every little tiny thing. And most parents are like, come on, let's go home. But really, this is a period where the child is completely fascinated by the world around him. And the young boy at the bottom with these little matrushka dolls, with these Russian dolls, trying to put them in order. This for him is a sensitive period for order, which we're going to touch on in a moment. So, Maria Montessori used to say that the only language men will ever speak perfectly is the one they learn in babyhood, when no one can teach them anything. So what does that tell you? The child can teach themselves just by being in an environment that allows for that stimulation to occur. So we can then categorize the sensitive periods in the following ways. So we have a sensitive period for order, which happens from birth to 5 years old. We have a sensitive period for language, which is from birth to 5 years old. A sensitive period for movement from birth to 4 years. A sensitive period for refinement of the senses, meaning sight, touch, taste, smell, sound. This is from birth to 5 years. And sensitive period for manners and courtesies. So learning how to be socially accepted in their environment by good manners and grace. So, understanding the sensitive period can offer us many answers to the curious behavior of children. So, when we're seeing a child have a meltdown because they didn't get the right spoon, that's a sensitive period for order, because that's what they want. That's what their mind has attuned them to have. So we're witnessing a sensitive period for order. When the child is picking up little insects, this is a sensitive period for small objects, which then relates to the refinement of the senses. Why does the child repeat certain words or phrases? Because this is a sensitive period for language. My child right now is going, why with everything. And sometimes it does drive people a bit crazy after a while, because, you're like, the other day we were going out and it says, why is the truck going? I said, because of this. Why? And I was explaining until I didn't have a reason to explain why anymore. But it was amazing how you can see the sensitive period for language really emerging. So the first sensitive period that we're going to be talking about is a sensitive period for order. And this begins at birth and peaks into the 2nd year of development and continues through to the age of 5. So the sensitive period for order can be characterized by a desire for consistency and repetition, where children crave routine and structure. So during this period of sensitivity, children may be more interested in lining things up or putting things back in its right place, more than playing with their toys as such. And in order for us to support this sensitive period for order, it's important to establish ground rules, create an organizing environment, which we will focus on later on when I talk about the prepared environment. And also, everything has its place. If something is out of place, like I mentioned about the spoon, the child can have a complete meltdown and a tantrum. So this is something that that parents and caregivers need to bear in mind. And when this does happen, we have to acknowledge their feelings when these disruptions do occur. So the photo that you can see on your right-hand side is actually my charge. with a little smiley face on. And during my moment of walking around the playroom, I noticed he started lining up all these little wooden food toys. And what was completely, utterly fascinating to me is I didn't interrupt him. I stood back and I just took this photo and observed him, that it's actually done through some kind of mathematical sequence, because you can notice he has fruit, he has a candle, and then he has like a can or an item. Then he does another candle, another piece of fruit after that. I mean, this is the child, without even me even teaching any of this, this is innate with the child. So all children are born with mathematical abilities, which for me, like, blew my mind, to be honest. Then this takes us on to the sensitive period for language. So from birth to age 5, children are in the sensitive period for language. So they have a sensitivity to language that involves 3 key phases: spoken language, written language, and reading. So the sensitive period for spoken language is from 7 months to 3 years of age. I mean, to be honest with you, when the baby's even in the uterus, start speaking to the baby, as most parents do, because children hear it. They do hear it, even if they're not even born yet. It begins when the child first creates sounds by mimicking the mouth of their parents or of their caregivers, you know, and starting, you know, this progresses over time, from mimicking sounds and babbling to actually producing words and then simple sentences. So this sensitive period for learning to write is normally from 3.5 to 4.5 years of age, where this piques their interest. So this begins when the child learns the alphabet and then sight words, which form the foundation for reading and writing skills. So for reading, a child is intensely interested from 4.5 to 5.5 years of age. I would say that's the average time frame that researchers have come up with. But with my child, for example, he's shown an intense need for reading already at 2.5 years old. So honestly, follow the child. It really depends on your child. And there is no comparison to this. You should never compare your child to or one of the children in the class to everyone else, because again, every child is different. You know, to support language development at home, it's really, really essential that you use rich language, really good vocabulary. No need to use baby gaga words, you know, use the real words, because children are picking this up, and we want to create, or not create as such, but you know, we want children to be able to use the correct terminology when speaking in their language or languages. You know, if a child is not exposed to language between, you know, at this very young age, they will suffer huge limitations in their intellectual growth. And it reminds me of a story of a young boy who was found living in the forest with wild dogs. And he was 11 years old when he was found, and this happened quite a while back in France, I think back in the 1800s. And this boy had never regained language ever again, or able to speak, because that period, that sensitive period for language, was completely lost. So this is very important that we focus on having and addressing the sensitive period for language for young children at this age, and has a lot of stimuli to encourage this development. This then takes us on to the sensitive period for movement. So this can be divided into 2 phases. So from birth to 2.5 years, so children are sensitive to gross and fine motor development. And this begins when the child learns to crawl, to pull up, and then eventually walk without any assistance. Over time, children also develop their fine motor skills, and this can be done with a lot of activities that repeat this, such as, you know, art. It can even be threading, which builds, you know, hand and eye coordination. So from 2.5 to 4.5 years of age, children enter the sensitive period for refinement and coordination of movement. So this is when the child is able to hold objects with both hands, When you throw them a ball, they are able to maybe perhaps do that with both hands, though it takes a bit of time for that. And this is also a point where they can develop their pencil grip, which later on help them with their writing abilities. And, in order for us to support that development of the sensitive period for movement, it's important that we provide children with plenty of outdoor activity. So taking them to the parks, letting them go on the swings, even the home environment, you can really set it out so the child can have like a little climbing frame in their room, or, in the back garden, you have a mini trampoline, or, even little small tasks such as, like I said, drawing or washing their hands or threading. These skills really help to hone in on the sensitive period for movement, whether it's fine or gross motor skills. And then we are going to look at the sensitive period for refinement of the senses. So as you can see, the children in the pictures, this little girl, you can't see her face, but she's actually blindfolded. And these are small little tiles that have different variations of rough and smooth textures on it. And here she's able to identify which one's the smoothest and which one's the roughest. And what's most important part of the sensitive period for refinement of the senses is that Montessori said you need to isolate the senses of the child when they are developing in the first few years or the first plane of development. So she's just isolating her sense of touch. And with the little girl on the right-hand side with all the colors, this is a girl who's refining her sense of sight with the variations of different colors, and by putting them with the same kind of genre of color, to say. And the little boy at the bottom, he's refining his sense of sound, because each of those little cylinder containers have rice in it, but they go from heavy to light sound. So he has to put it in the correct order, which is amazing, because if we overwhelm children with too much stimuli, which I see is a common thing in a lot of toy stores. You get one of these walkers or these toys and have too many lights, too many sounds to it. It's overwhelming for the child. So it's really important that we refine these senses so they can build up to become really strong and more acute when they're older. So Montessori recognized this, and she developed lots of materials, as you can see there, for example, to really refine the senses of the child. So, in order for us to encourage children to refine their senses, take them out for a walk, observe the sounds that they can hear, like when they're walking, what's the crunching under their feet? It can be done anywhere. You don't need anything fancy to teach children that. It's the environment around us every day that allows for children to progress. And then last but not least, we're going to be looking at the sensitive period for manners and courtesies. So from 2.5 to 5 years, children learn that they are part of a group, and they develop an intense interest in social relationships. So this is the stage of development where children learn to develop friendships and participate in cooperative play, which in a Montessori nursery, there are actually mixed ages. So children tend to learn from one another and through observation as well. To support the development of social skills in your child, it's important to provide them with opportunities to integrate with other children their own age or sometimes a little bit older. At home, we can model positive behaviors and practice grace and courtesy, such as please and thank you. When my child was born, I started with him since he was 1 day old. I always spoke to him and I said, please and thank you. Now, some people might think that's utterly ridiculous, but really it's not. At 2.5 years of age, he instantly says, please and thank you without me having to remind him. And if he's done something that, has maybe upset somebody in the family, or he's done something by accident, he will apologize for it. But this has grown a part of him. So if we start from birth, by teaching a sensitive period of for manners and courtesies, it will be 100% ingrained in the child. And that's what we want to do. We want to bring out respectful, grateful, kind adults in the future. Okay, so how do we recognize the sensitive periods? the sensitive periods of each phase is completely spontaneous. As I said, it's like this little fire that ignites, and the child, through repetition, burns this fire until it dies down, and they have been fulfilled with the spontaneous phase that they've gone through, as I've discussed through the sensitive period types. You cannot predict when it will happen. You just need to observe and identify it. And, with the timeline, as we said, from 0 to 6, from 2.5 to 4.5 years old, I mean, that's just a guided timeline. It might happen a bit earlier, it might happen a bit later, but it really does depend on the child. So what to do when you observe the sensitive periods unfolding? When you recognize it, prepare the environment to allow the child to exercise it. Do not disturb the child if they're in deep concentration. This is a sensitive period starting to happen. Just stand back like I did and just observe it and just be in awe of it, really. Take notes, and then when you see that child going through that sensitive period, prepare their environment by having certain activities out that will help them refine these sensitive periods. And, the whole point is to let the child's inner spirit come to play. So I'm really excited to talk about the prepared environment, because as we've progressed from the 4 planes of development, understanding each child's plane of learning, moving on to the absorbent mind, and then discussing what the sensitive periods are, we're then able to create a prepared environment that can cater for these sensitive periods. So, we can see a young boy who's in the garden. It's been prepared for him. He just has to go there and take whatever his curiosity and his interest takes him. You see in this environment, the same boy actually, he has a mop, and his need is order. It's cleaning. I need to order this place. It's been provided for him, such as the young boy over there who would like a drink of water. He can take it whenever he wants to. He doesn't have to ask, oh, can I have a drink because he's thirsty? He can do it himself. We are promoting independence for children. So by understanding these sensitive periods, we then can promote the child's independence to do things for themselves. And, you as a guide, we're allowing optimal growth in their learning and self-confidence. And we're encouraging them to feel safe and loved in this prepared environment. Children search their environment and discover objects and exercises which satisfy these compulsions of their sensitive periods. So what is a prepared environment? So if you walk into a Montessori classroom, which I hope you can have if you look on YouTube, you can have a little walkthrough of that. But, that environment looks like a home and feels comfortable and feels safe. This environment pushes the development of children in an optimal way and encourages children to engage in physical activity, which is always reality-based. Like I said, it mimics a home. So, children should be free to make their own choices as well. So if you set activities up, the child is able to make choices, but it's done carefully prepared and with a lot of thought from the teacher, the guide, the parent, the caregiver. And a prepared environment gives children the opportunity to develop and to grow. So here's a beautiful example of a prepared environment. And one thing that really stands out to me is that it emanates freedom, it emanates beauty, and it there's a contact with nature within this environment. I mean, if I'm not a child and I have a classroom like that or a garden like that, I instantly am falling in love with the beauty, the freedom, and the nature that surrounds me. So the sensitive periods direct a child's purposeful exploration of their environment, and children search and discover objects and exercises, everything that goes around them. So a prepared environment should have different areas for a child to practice activities. So they should have a little kitchen there. They should have a really beautiful play area. They should have an area where they're able to take their naps and relax with a book on their lap. This should be available to the child at any time. And one thing that a prepared environment should allow is a lot of movement. And like I said, this connection to freedom, beauty, and nature. Again, this is the inside of what a Montessori classroom looks like. The one on the left top hand corner there, it's beautiful. It's ordered. It's clean. It allows freedom of movement. You know, as you can see in the middle, there are a choice of activities that the child can work on to refine their senses. Could be, you could see there's for language, for order, for plenty of movement that goes around. And the children in the classroom, they all have their little workstation, working on their own activities that interest them, that connects to the sensitive period that they're going through. The teacher is there observing, taking notes, and when she feels like a child needs to be further challenged again because this child has exercised all their activities, then the teacher guides them by putting out different activities to meet their needs and presenting this to them. I mean, look how beautiful that classroom is. At the bottom, they're surrounded by nature all around. I mean, just that simplicity and beauty is fundamental to the intellectual growth of the child completely. And here the sensitive periods can really unfold to its fullest to allow for maximum development to happen. And what we're witnessing is a lot of physical and spiritual aspects that come into play, you know, and is catered through a space that is carefully prepared with an aspect that, again, relates to freedom, respect, beauty, and a complete love for nature. So, you know, how do the sensitive periods unfold within the prepared environment? So in order for the external environment to be prepared, this creates an internal harmony within the children. So it's really, really important that external order needs to be achieved to create internal order for each child. External order is consistent and predictable so the child can gain, again, like I said, an internal order, which then satisfies their sensitive periods. You know, when we cater for this prepared environment, we need to take the time to create a space. We need to slow things down. This helps children make complete sense of the world. It's not saying that Montessori is children can do whatever they want. No, there are clear ground rules that are there to support the children. And this is where the sensitive period for grace and courtesy comes in, because without ground rules, how can we learn to respect the things around us? More importantly, you know, if we observe the child and we notice one of the sensitive periods, we need to set that environment up so they can exercise this little fire that's burning within them. Even with the slightest deviation, you know, where the prepared environment is not ordered for the child, this can really set off tantrums, it can set off unrestfulness. So this is something we want to stay clear of and make sure that it's predictable for children. So there's a video that I would like to share with you. It's a very short video. It might come up a little bit loud. So if it does, I apologize for that. I'll try and turn it down if I can. But, you know, to sum up, considerations for the prepared environment should offer safety to the child. It should instill a sense of independence. The child should be able to participate in the community by being hands-on. You have to cater to a sense of order, and there has to be lots of movement around, and the child should, you know, use all the maximum effort in these activities. Remember, you know, the toddler is seeking to build their personality, and it can be formed in this way if we we've created a prepared environment for them, then it hones in on these sensitive periods. And we need to offer that support to them on a constant basis, because if we offer the support to children to be independent and encourage opportunities for independence, we send a message of respect and faith in their ability. And, you know, for the child, this really helps with their self-confidence, their concentration, and it honestly teaches them gratitude. So this is a short video on what happens when we prepare an environment for the children. And when we allow children to work together as a team, to learn from each other, and to be able to release these wonderful sensitive periods. So this is actually a Montessori school that's based in Hong Kong. And as you can see, the children are preparing a meal because they've invited their parents for a dinner party. And as you notice, yes, the children are in the kitchen, they're working independently. Do you see a teacher there? There's a teacher, of course, taking this video, but no interference whatsoever. And it's really, really beautiful to see this unfold. We're putting complete trust in the child. Even at a young age, we can let children use a simple knife, to use a peeler. Again, children want to be part of their community. So it makes you really understand that if we give children the tools to be fully independent, they can really achieve anything they put their mind to, because we've given them these tools. Wonderful. Thank you for having this talk with me today. And it's a real privilege to be invited back to ECD Forum. And I hope that we now have a clear understanding of what a prepared environment allows for children, how the sensitive periods can really unfold in it, and how each child has an absorbent mind. And, to leave off this quote, by Maria Montessori, the first aim of the prepared environment is, as far as possible, to render the growing child independent of the adult. So never help a child with a task at which he feels he can succeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Darcel. That's a wonderful session by you. We really loved it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good evening.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Thank you. Bye.